always Receiving Nur's weekly Quran studies. Now today with Dr. Yamina we'll be studying from Surah, inshallah. We encourage you to ask questions during the session. Anytime you have a comment or question, please you can jump in and ask your question. And during the class, please keep your mic muted. But if you have a question, you can turn your mic on. Sometimes it causes technical problems. Inshallah, we can start now. I'll turn the mic to Dr. Yamina. Salam alaikum.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى أصحابه وأهله أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So welcome back to Always Receiving Nur's weekly classes on Surah Al-Ra'd. May we always be open to receiving the light of divine guidance in this surah and in the whole Quran, inshallah, and in our life through the creational ayat, and may we live with that guidance, bi'idhnillah. So we stopped at the 6th ayah, which was they ask you to hasten the evil rather than the good, although there are examples of punishment before them in the past. Your Rabb, your sustainer, is full of forgiveness for people for their wrongdoings, and your Rabb is also severe in retribution. And the next ayah, which is the 7th ayah, says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُنذِرٌ وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ حَادٍ. And the meaning, or the approximate meaning, or an interpretation of it is, however, the ungrateful who refuse to believe, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who practice kufr, and kafara is, the first meaning is to be ungrateful, and as a result is someone who does not believe, and in some yet it's clear that it's more than it's actually actively not being open, not making an effort to open one's heart to believe. So however, the ungrateful who refuse to believe say, why has no ayah, no sign been sent down to him from his Rabb, from his sustainer? But you are only a warner, and all people have a guide. And this all people have a guide actually, and a guide to all people also, it could be understood. And a guide to all people. So here, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, who are these people? They have been described in the previous ayat of this surah from the very beginning, from ayah 1 to 6. From the very beginning, in the first ayah, they are described as أكثر الناس, like they represent most people, most of us, and we can say it's most of the population, and also me most of the time when I'm not aware. And it says, وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. What these people do not believe, because believing is something that we do consciously, intentionally. And so when I am unaware, even when I claim that I'm a believer, I am not intentionally believing. And so it says most people do not believe. And they are not certain of meeting their Rabb. This is important because it's not only knowing, having information about meeting our Rabb, but being certain. لَعَلَّكُمْ بِلِقَاءِ رَبِّكُمْ تُوقِنُونَ, having that certainty, that yaqeen, that knowing in your heart, knowing this is it, that's it, you have no doubt. And these people are not aware that the earth, the mountains, the running waters, everything has been created as ayat for people who reflect. So they are people who do not reflect on the creation. They are people who do not use their reason consciously. It says there are in the land, in the neighboring plots, gardens of vineyards, cornfields, palm tree in cluster and otherwise, all watered with the same water, yet we make some of them taste better than others. And when we reflected on the message that this area is bringing to us, it actually shatters our perception of the world when we are unaware, when it seems that things are causing other things, that results are the product of their causes. This area is telling us, can't you see that it's the same water, but the tastes are different? And we said we can go down to the basis and say everything is made of the same matter, the same atoms, but everything is so different. And so these are ayat for people who reason, people who stop and reason, how could it be? And this is again only possible when it's done intentionally. And following the guidance of the Quran. And the fifth ayah, they are people who wonder how they will be created anew after they are dust. Like after death, how come we are created anew? And so they are unaware how they have been created. They are being created anew. We are being created anew here and now in this world. We were all babies. We were all toddlers, small kids, and now we're growing. And we think we are growing in age, but we are also changing. We are recreated anew, in new forms. But it's done with such easiness and with such rahmah that unless we stop and reflect, we don't even notice it. So they are the ones, we are told again in the same ayah, in the fifth ayah, who deny their Rabb. They may not deny God, but they deny God as their Rabb, the one who takes care of us every moment, who is taking care of even our breathing right now. We don't know how, we we cannot sustain our life. So those are all signs and ayat indicating rububiyyah activities. And it is they who carry shackles around their necks, and we said the shackles are, from one perspective, a sign to their false belief, unquestioned beliefs about the world, the way they perceive the world. And in the sixth ayah was last week, they ask you to hasten the evil rather than the good, because they cannot see that the good is from their Rabb. They cannot see that the good is what makes their Rabb known to us. They are the ayat, so you don't need something special like evil to know that God is in control. And so this now in this ayah, in the seventh ayah of Surah Al-Ra'd, we're told that يقول الذين كفروا لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه. Those who refuse to believe, they say, why has no ayah been sent down to him from his sustainer? The ayah in referred to in this ayah, the ayah that the disbelievers are referring to, probably means special sign. That's how most of the commentators on the Quran have understood it. special sign in the sense of what we call usually miracle. And why this was understood this way, we understand it this way, because it is clear that they are not aware, or at least, or they do not accept that everything, every created being, every created event is actually an ayah, since that is not their perception of the world. So when they say ayah, they probably mean something special, something unusual. So they want miracles that would show that Muhammad والسلام, is a messenger of God. However, we're told in other places in the Quran that miracles won't convince those who refuse to believe. So just because you show them miracles, it won't change their mind. And when they see miracles, actually what they say is, oh, it's magic. And this is not only true for the people at the time of Muhammad والسلام, but for instance, the people at the time of Musa السلام, when he showed them the signs, the miracles, the Pharaoh and his people said, oh, he is a sorcerer, this is sorcery, this is magic. And so the people of Mecca also said about Muhammad والسلام's miracles, like the splitting of the moon, for instance, which is mentioned in the Quran in Surah 54, which is, the surah is called Al-Qamar, meaning the moon. It's called after this event. In that surah, in the first, the miracle is mentioned in the very first ayah of this surah.
Could you remind the surah number, Sister Yamina?
Yeah, 54.
Okay.
54 is Surah Al-Qamar, and ayat 1, 2, 3. And by the way, actually, since we started talking about miracles, Isra is the expert here. She published a book about the miracles of the prophets in the Quran. So Isra, if you have anything to add, any comment, please feel free to do so. So the ayah starts, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر وإن يروا آية يعرضوا ويقولوا سحر مستمر وكذبوا واتبعوا أهواءهم وكل أمر مستقر. So the hour is night and the moon is split, but if they see a sign, they turn away and say, this is clearly magic, for they are bent on giving it the lie. وكذبوا. They don't. Whatever they see, they say it's a lie, it's not true. Being always want to follow their own desires, yet everything reveals its truth in the end. So the miracle of the splitting of the moon mentioned in this ayah, in 54:1, is also mentioned in hadiths in Sahih al-Bukhari, for instance. And these hadiths are mutawatir. Which means they were transmitted by more than one authority, by numerous authorities, which makes them sound. By the way, actually, in the Islamic tradition, the scripture, which is the Quran and the Hadith, the Quran has been very early on being memorized and written down. And the hadith were memorized, and later they were thoroughly, some people devoted their lives to write them down and collect them. So there are collections. When we say sahih, these are collections of the hadiths. And so even the hadith, when we say, oh, it's not as sure, as certain as the Quran, compared to other religious traditions, it is still something that has been early on collected and being preserved, unlike in other traditions where it happened later on and it was not it was never really memorized. The original languages they have not been preserved. The message has not been preserved in its original message. So when we have this hadith about this, for instance, miracles, these are documents that have more. How would you say that, Isra? At least they are documented. These miracles have been documented, unlike, for instance, the miracles of Musa alayhi salam or Isa, Jesus alayhi salam, in other traditions, because they are also mentioned in the Quran, and that's why we know about them, and that's why we believe in them. So this claim of the disbelievers, why has no ayah, was no miracle being sent down to him from his Rabb, has sometimes been understood as inferring that Muhammad ﷺ did not actually perform any miracle, and that Muhammad's the sole and only miracle was the Quran. But as Fakhruddin Razi suggests in his tafsir of this ayah, in his tafsir al-Kabir of this ayah, he says it could be that they didn't consider his miracles as miracles, as we know about other prophets who came with miracles or clear signs, but still people rejected them. And it could be that they asked this before witnessing any of his miracles. So just because this ayah says so, it does not mean that Muhammad ﷺ never came with a miracle. So this demand for miracles is not actually inappropriate, because if someone is claiming to be a prophet, it does make sense to ask him for something special, for a special sign. However, this is true if they were genuinely interested in the message, and then they wanted to confirm that Muhammad ﷺ was indeed a messenger of God. But these people, from the beginning of this ayah, that is not their intention. They are not interested in the message. Yet, they ask for miracles, which they either end up as denying as magic, or think about us, if we saw something special, what will happen? We won't deny it, but very soon we forget about it.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Could it also be that they're genuinely interested in seeing an ayah or a miracle, but their concept of ayah or miracle is incorrect, and they're not aware of it?
It could be. It could be. At the end of the day, is if we look at it in the context of this surah, Surah Al-Ra'd, remember in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th ayat, it was talking to these most people about the ayat around us in the world. So if these people have a little bit of intention to open their heart, they could at least stop and consider that possibility. But it seems that they just jump in and say, where is the special ayah? And we know from different parts of the Quran, and later in this surah as well, that they keep saying, where is the ayah? Because even when they saw some things that were unusual, they said it's magic. So how can you deal with someone who doesn't accept that anything is an ayah, doesn't want to stop and reflect? At the same time, if you show him something unusual, when they see something different, which you could think this would satisfy them, this is what they think is an ayah, something out of the
I have it on.
The accustomed sunnatullah, the habitual, the so-called normal or ordinary. Yet, when they see something like that, they say it can't be. This must be magic. So there's no way to satisfy someone in this with this attitude.
I can sit on the chair. Nerve down, feather. That's fine. Yeah.
Who's yours?
So the issue is, in this ayah, I think, is not whether Muhammad ﷺ performed miracles or not, as some people claim it to be, or they discussed this issue. I think that the issue here is that those who refuse to believe won't believe even when they see what we call miracles, extraordinary events, accustomed events. May I ask Isra, can you please mute everyone? Unless someone is going to comment or ask a question or...
Sure, sorry.
Thank you. And so this is not difficult to understand in this context because we know that these are people who don't grasp that everything is an ayah. And so everything is actually a miracle, including their own breathing. And just because it occurs easily and constantly doesn't make it ordinary. So for someone who doesn't want to see this or accept this, if you show him something extraordinary, they are going to explain it away and still not see it as a miracle. And you know, ordinary, literally it means with no special or distinctive features. And we keep talking about everything as being ordinary. Astaghfirullah. So nothing in creation is ordinary, actually. It's only that we get used to seeing it and we start taking it for granted, or we always took it for granted because that's how we saw it always. And if we witnessed the most extraordinary miracle and it kept recurring again and again, after a while, what would happen? We would stop being amazed at it, and we'd call it ordinary as well. Unless we live consciously, of course. And then we would realize that we live in an extraordinary world, that actually everything is extraordinary. The fact that I intend to speak and it speaks, some words are coming out, and the fact that these words, others can hear them and make sense of them, this is just, it's a miracle. There's no way we can explain this phenomenon. And so we would be amazed at daily happenings, such as the day and night, as we're told in the previous ayat, and motions of the sun and the moon, as at the miracles of the prophets, for instance. Because then we will realize that they are all miracles, they're all signs to God's infinite power, infinite wisdom, knowledge, and rahmah, and all the divine names. The more we reflect, the more we see more divine names reflected there. And that's why the miracles of Muhammad ﷺ do not play the same role among Muslims, or within the Islamic tradition at least, as the miracle of Jesus in Christianity do, for instance. And so, for instance, Jesus' miraculous birth in the Islamic tradition, it affords him no higher position or no presumed divinity or anything. Although it is accepted that his birth was unusual. And in the Quran, in Surah 3, in Al Imran, Ayah 59, so 359, it says the similitude of Jesus, of Isa alayhi salam, before God is that of Adam alayhi salam. He created him from dust, then said to him, be, and he is. إن مثل عيسى عند الله كمثل آدم خلقه من تراب ثم قال له كن فيكون. God actually says, be and it is to everything. That's how he creates everything. That's what we told in the Quran, and it is something that those who reflect and reason, as we are told in the previous ayat, will see in the world here and now. It is a way of creating that we can witness. We can at least witness the signs that indicate that indeed creation is created, is happening, occurring through be and it is. And so Adam was born. It's like saying here, yes, Jesus was born without father, but so what? Adam was born with neither a mother nor a father. And so the birth of Jesus, or the birth of Adam, or the birth of all infants, actually not only human beings, but others as well, they are all miraculous. They can't be explained through their father and mother. And there are so many other beings that are created through only one parent-like figure. And so what if we look at ourselves like we have no say about who our child is, how they look like, or anything. So how come it's different? It's all divine will. It's all be and it is. And that's why, although Prophet Muhammad ﷺ performed many miracles, they are not overstated. To keep, you know, the balance, the perspective is very balanced, because there are actually lots of hadith narrations in Sahih of Muslim, Bukhari, and others about the miracles performed by Muhammad ﷺ. Miracles of healing the sick and the wounded, restoring vision to the blind, miracles of animals and trees, testifying his prophethood, like saying the Shahada, saluting the Prophet ﷺ as the messenger of God, miracles about increase of food and water. It's narrated in some hadith more than once that Muhammad ﷺ satisfied the thirst of a whole army with water flowing from his finger. And in another case, the whole congregation, again in more than one hadith, the whole jama'ah, the whole congregation, heard a dry wooden post, like I think it's a palm tree, against which Muhammad ﷺ used to lean while delivering the sermon. Someone made a new pulpit, and so that palm tree, that pole, was pushed away, and it started weeping. So this is what we look at as unconscious, but it wept because it was separated from him, from the Prophet ﷺ. And so there are many narrations, Sahih narrations about the miracles of Muhammad ﷺ. These miracles, however, they are, although they are somewhat popular among Muslims, they are not as popular as the miracles of Jesus, for instance, Isa alayhi salam, in Christianity, because miracles have never been at the center of the Islamic tradition. The center of all attention is the Quran. And for good reason, because it is the Quran which reveals the meaning of the ayat in creation, as well as the implication of the miracles of the prophets that look to us. Those miracles, yes, we were not there, we never witnessed them firsthand, but they have implications that look to us. If they are anything mentioned in the Quran, has implication that have a message for me here and now. And I'm not going to go into that. The expert in that is Isra, as I mentioned before. So miracles are perceived as evidence. They are evidence to claims of prophethood. They are there for convincing those who deny those claims. But they are not, the purpose of miracles is not to compel anyone to believe. Miracles are not the criterion for judging the truth of a message. I mean, it could be magic, as they said. What if someone comes and he's actually a magician or an illusionist or something? Am I going to believe anything he says just because of that? No, that's a completely different story. The message, we have to reflect and reason, as we are told again and again repeatedly in the Quran. So the signs, the ayat, the evidences, al-bayyinat, the clear signs of the truth of the message require reflection. They require sound reasoning, as it is mentioned also in the previous ayat of this Surah Al-Ra'd. Plus, miracles are direct evidence only for those who witness them. This is important because some people say, I've never seen them, so how can I believe in Jesus when I've never seen his miracles? In the Quran, the message is not based on those special ayat, those special miracles. It's based on the ayat that we see in everyday life. Later, when we understand that, then we may also understand what is the significance of those miracles, special miracles of the prophets in our life, to the extent, and only to the extent that we understand the ayat in creation in general. Actually, in the Quran, this is, I think, is significant. The word miracle, which is in Arabic mu'jiza, does not appear in the Quran. They are all called ayat. So mu'jiza is a change in the course of the flow of things that God allows to the way He creates. And these miracles, these special signs, it's like God allows an interruption in the course of nature, in the course of His creation, in His sunnah of creating, in order to confirm the authenticity of His and veracity and truthfulness of His messengers. But what is interesting is that the Quran never uses the word mu'jiza or miracle. Everything is called ayah. And this has been understood as, therefore, the miracles of the prophets are evidences confirming the truth of claims to prophethood, which means prophets convinced their audiences of the truth of their mission by performing miracles. But that is different than the message that they preached, the message that they brought. And even those miracles, in the Quran, there is an expression that is repeated again and again, which is إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَمَا كَانَ لِرَسُولٍ أَنْ يَأْتِيَ بِآيَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And no messenger could bring an ayah, could perform a miracle, let's say, except a sign, except by God's leave, by God's permission. So they are not the messengers, the prophets are not the performers of the miracles. It is repeated again and again. Like in Surah Al-Ra'd, in ayah 38, we will see it says again that no messenger could bring an ayah except by God's leave. And that's consistent with the general message of the Quran, because those who are asking for special miracles, they're missing the point. They think the prophet is someone. Prophets are special people, like people with special powers. But that's not what the prophets are telling them. They're saying we're only messengers from God. So that insistence itself is missing the point. And that's why in the Quran, every time a miracle of a prophet is mentioned, it keeps saying bi'idhnillah. So it is by God's leave that fire becomes cool and safe for Ibrahim alayhi salam when he's cast into the fire. And it is by God's leave that the sea was parted into two for Musa alayhi salam, and water gushed from the rock when Musa alayhi salam stroked his staff. And Jesus, we are told, healed the sick and restored vision to the blind and revived the dead in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Again, it says, bi'idhnillah, by God's leave. Sulaiman alayhi salam understood the language of birds, not of his own. He was taught that. He was made to travel in the air, we are told. And the moon was split into two at a gesture of Muhammad ﷺ. And all these miracles, we are told, are ayat, just like all the rest of so-called natural phenomena, just like everything else. Which means they all, again, point back to their performer, to their source, to their Rabb, to their creator, the maker. And the fact that the term ayah, the same term ayah, is used in the Quran to refer to everything, what is taught to be miraculous and what we think is normal. And look at the distinction between the miraculous and the normal, between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Is it a distinction that exists in fact out there in the world? The Quran is saying, look carefully, it's not. It is due to our own perception. And so it does not reflect the reality as we're taught in the Quran. I mean, why would a live shoot growing out of a lifeless seed, or a live bird, singing bird, coming out of an egg, be less miraculous than a so-called miracle, than Musa alayhi salam striking his staff and water coming out? Why would someone take a medicine, which is something lifeless, and get well? This is not a miracle, but if a prophet says a word and the person gets well, we think that's a miracle, just because we haven't seen it before. We are not accustomed to seeing it. Whereas the first one, seeing the bird coming out of an egg, because we've seen it again and again, then we start taking it for granted. And that's why the Quran invites. Sorry.
So as long as we look at these ordinary happenings as normal events, in other words, as long as we explain them in the causal chain,
Mm-hmm.
We don't see. They're perfectly explainable, so there's no need to a recourse to a maker that's outside this realm. And because of this, then any extraordinary event, if it were to happen, would still be explained away in that same fashion.
That's
right?
true. Yes, that's absolutely true. And that's very, very important to stop and reflect on this. This is very, very important. I mean, the whole concept of Tawheed as a reality, not a dogma, as a living reality, depends on what you just said. So it's very, very important. And Bediüz Zaman Said Nursi, a commentator on the Quran and Muslim scholar, he says, the Quran of miraculous exposition rends the veil of familiarity. That's what I kept saying, accustoms, that familiarity. And the habitual cast over all beings in the universe, which are known as ordinary things, but are each extraordinary and a miracle of divine power, and reveals those astonishing wonders to conscious beings. It attracts their gazes and opens up for minds an inexhaustible treasury of knowledge. So you see in the ayat in this surah so far, all the examples that were given, the day, the night, the rivers, the food, the water, they are all things that we take as ordinary. And so because of our veil of ghafla, our veil of habit, and so we never stop and ask and reflect, and the Quran is inviting us to actually, is interrupting that perception of ours, and it's inviting us to see beyond that veil of familiarity and to see that everything is a miracle of divine power. And to realize that, as we've been just reminded, causes do not produce the result. This is so, so, so important. If you ever want to have a breakthrough in Tawheed, in your relationship with the Quran, therefore in relationship with the ayat, not only in the Quran, but the ayat that it refers to outside in the world, in our daily life, we have to reflect on this. Causes do not produce the results. I'm telling you the conclusion, and I'm inviting you to go and reflect for yourselves. And if you need any things to read to help you in your journey and your reflections, then please just get in touch with us. There are plenty of things out there, alhamdulillah, that will help us. Causes do not produce the results. They create together. The causes and their results are all created together. They're all signs. Actually, their interconnections are signs. You have an egg, you have a living, singing, beautiful, pretty bird, flying bird that can go everywhere, that can eat from everywhere, that is connected to the whole of the world. That connection between the egg and the bird and the rest of the world, those interconnections are signs, as indicated in the previous ayat from 2, 3, and 4. And when we grasp this truth, when we know, when our heart is satisfied with this truth, when we are amazed and feel the joy of seeing beyond the things themselves and seeing what they are pointing to, when we actually see them as signs and witness this reality in our daily life, then we will start understanding the meaning of Tawheed as a lived reality. Tawheed is a lived reality, is our life. It describes what's going on in our life here and now. And it has implication in our daily life as well. Then we will start understanding the meaning of the ayat around us, like it is explained in Surat Yusuf alayhi salam, inshallah. So
I may add something here.
Sure.
I think the value of interruption is, interruption in our habits is extremely valuable, because as you were saying, we stop noticing the wonderful things around us simply because they happen all the time, over and over again, and then we stop noticing them, and it takes an interruption, either an interruption by choice, that something we will make a decision to rethink our assumptions, or that happens through a crisis. And that, for instance, when you get sick, all of a sudden, we pretend it's my body, things are happening just like that. It has to happen that way. It's natural. Of course, my blood will be cleansed. Of course, my food will be digested. Of course, I will taste what I put in my mouth. And then something happens, and then we realize, oh, wow, maybe it didn't have to happen this way. And even when the interruptions are happening, there is an apparent cause for them, but those interruptions really make us come back and say, well, really, were these things happening by themselves? We take them for granted. And it reminded me of a memoir that a woman had written, and she basically had this very unexpected sickness in her second year in college, and she was coming from an atheist background. And she just was amazed at, there was a little bit hormonal imbalance. She had an allergy reaction to something, and the whole body was in a mess for 2 years almost. And she was shocked, and the way she took it was, of course, she was reading other things at the time. She was reading the Quran as well. And she was amazed at how this body that was healthy for so long, that all of these millions of different things inside us is happening with so much order every single second, and she has been healthy throughout. So that crisis, this is just an particular example for her, but it happens to all of us, and these kind of interruptions, and they are interruptions for a compassionate purpose, because otherwise we'll just keep going through life and thinking that, yes, the egg made the bird, and this medicine made me well, and the rain made things grow, and so on. We'll be trapped in that superficial and illogical thinking and not see the signs. So it takes these kind of interruptions to come back. And really, for us to see these interruptions as meaningful, we need the Quranic guidance. And interestingly, I think miracle stories also are that kind of interruption as well in the Quran, that the Quran is talking about ayat in nature, and then it also talks about these so-called miracles, interruptions in natural order, because those kind of stories are inviting us in a way to rethink what we take for granted. Of course, if there's two parents, there will be a baby, if they are fertile. But wait a second, when you read virgin birth, wait a second, how is that happening? And that's an interruption to come back and rethink our assumptions about normal births and so on.
Thank you, Isra. That's very important. And I noticed you say illogical, because we think we are explaining things, but actually, if we stop and reflect, those explanations are illogical and unreasonable, actually. There is no way to explain. We think that, like fire was cool is a miracle. What about fire burning? We say, well, because fire burns. It's only because you've seen it burning all the time, you're saying it burns. Does it have to burn? Do you know what the burning process entails? Lots of things are involved for that combustion to be occurring, to be happening. So we just name. It's like, whenever I drop something, it falls, and I call the falling, I call it gravity, and then I say, I know why it's falling, because of gravity. Gravity was only the name. The burning was only the name you gave to what fire was doing. It's not an explanation. So actually, when we stop and reflect, those explanations that do not transcend what we see are unreasonable. So thank you, Isra. So as a summary or conclusion, we could say, so unaccustomed or unfamiliar special signs, special miracles are not the focus of the Quranic perspective, because then the crucial message would be totally missed. And the crucial message is that every single thing, every single event, every single being, everything is an ayah pointing to something beyond itself, and everything is miracles. And when we miss that, it seems as though everything were ordinary, and only special miracles are extraordinary. Whereas the Quran draws our attention to the fact that everything is an ayah. And that's why the focus is on this. When we get this, we're more likely to appreciate the meaning of special miracles. But if we just focus on special miracles, then we won't understand anything. And another point is, if there had been like focus on special miracles, then we would be more likely to attribute a special status to the apparent performer, such as Isa, Jesus alayhi salam, and eventually deify him and worship him because he is performing something special. He must be a god. And this would again lead to missing the whole point of the message and of messengership. What is the role of the messenger? Which is very important because we are supposed to follow in the footsteps of the messengers. They are the ones who teach us how to live as abd, to live with that awareness and consciousness of everything being ayah, everything being the result of rububiyyah activities, and worshipping and asking for help only from our Rabb. So the implications are very, very practical in our daily life. And so we would miss that when we don't realize that the messengers can only perform miracles bi-idhnillah, by God's leave, and not of their own accord. They do not have a power in themselves. They are also just channels, mirrors to the divine names. And this is related to our daily life, you know. We may expect sometimes special signs when we're in a especially unwanted situation. And this is an indication that we are not aware that everything is a sign and a miracle. When we find ourselves wishing for something extraordinary, then it means we forgot that nothing is ordinary, that everything is extraordinary. And the second part of the ayah is إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُنذِرٌ وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ حَادٍ. And this grammatically, literally, it can be understood in different ways. So one reading of this sentence could be, you are only a warner, and every nation has a guide like you. لِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ حَادٍ. Each qawm has their guide, has a guide. It could be also understood, you are only a warner, and also and you are the had لِكُلِّ qawm. You are a guide to all people. And it could be also read as, you are only a warner, and so you only deliver the message entrusted to you. And so it's understood from this that it is God alone who guides people to faith. The third one is, the way it was understood by Abdullah ibn Abbas, Sa'id ibn Jubayr, Mujahid, and others. And you can see that all of them are consistent with the general meaning of the Quran. And that's also the beauty of the Quran, that you can understand in all these different ways. So this Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, he understood that the messenger is only a warner, guiding people back to their Rabb, and it is what the messengers and prophets are. They do not guide people back to themselves. They do not claim greatness for themselves. they are pointing back to the Rabb and saying that He alone knows everything. He alone has control over everything. He alone is great. And that's exactly what the next ayah 8 and 9, tells us. It says, الله يعلم ما تحمل كل أنثى وما تغيض الأرحام وما تزداد وكل شيء عنده بمقدار عالم الغيب والشهادة الكبير المتعال. God knows what every female bears and by what the worms may fall short and what they may increase. For with Him everything is in a fixed measure, which means everything is in accordance with a measure, a scope, and a purpose. He knows both what is hidden and what is manifest. He is the supreme, the great one, the transcendent. And it's interesting that it ends with muta'al, He's being transcendent, because these people are blind to transcendence. They can't see that everything is pointing to that transcendent one. The decrease and increase here of what is in the womb has been traditionally understood as referring to the preterm and postterm of pregnancy. You know, in the case of the duration of pregnancy, there is an assumed average that is assumed again to be normal, as if the others are not. And it's about 280 days or 40 weeks. But in practice, babies may be born a little bit before or a little bit after. A little bit before is called preterm. Actually, before 37 weeks is preterm, and after 42 is postterm. What here the Quran is saying to us, all of them are signs. Why do you call the average that you calculated yourself? Actually, we never seen, just because more 40% of babies are born within 40 weeks doesn't make that normal and the other abnormal. And so it's saying this is a sign that this is happening with will, with choice. A will and a choice that transcend the events themselves. Someone is in control. It's not happening haphazardly or randomly. It's happening all within around 40 plus 40 minus. That shows that it's orderly, but it's not exactly, it's not mass production. There is will, there is choice. It's like for people's faces. They're all alike, yet they're all very different and distinct and unique. And so that's also a sign to will and choice. At the same time, apart from the pregnancy, the term of pregnancy, it has also been understood as referring to the developments that take place in the child while it's in its mother womb. You know, the physical development, the decrease or increase in each of its limbs, potentialities. Some people have capabilities and powers and gifts that others don't, and you can see that from the very beginning when they're born. And all that also are signs that everything is created on purpose. And interestingly, while before the ayat were given all around us, the answer to those who ignore the ayat around them, which they interact with day in and day out, in this ayah, they are invited to reflect on yet another ayah, and this ayah is directly related to their own birth, their own who we are in this world, and it's telling us, consider your own birth. Can't you see that He is your Rabb, that you have a Rabb who has decided about how tall you are, how you look like, your intelligence, your gifts, even the sound of your voice, where you were born, the color of your skin, who your parents were. all these things, we had no say about it. So these are all signs telling us about our Rabb. And so we can stop and marvel at all this and feel at home as guests of this Rabb. And so again, I remind ourselves that when we say that everything is an ayah means it indicates our Rabb, and therefore it has value. It has value and meaning only through its connection with Him. Things don't have value in themselves. They don't have meaning. So if we want meaning in our life, purpose, and we all crave purpose and meaning and value in our lives, that's only possible through connecting back to ourselves and therefore everything else to our Rabb. I want to end with a meaningful ayah from the Quran, which is ayah 26 of the third surah, Al-Imran. Say, O God, sovereign of all sovereignty, you grant sovereignty unto whom you will, and take sovereignty away from whom you will. And you exalt whom you will, and abase whom you will. In your hand is all good. Truly, you have the power to will anything. قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you, Sister Yamina. And any questions from the audience? Any comments? We can take some questions before.
I think one thing that I caught my attention is the way verse 8 followed from after verse 7. Initially, when I looked at, they seemed disconnected to me. But as we discussed, it seemed very appropriate that verse 7 is talking about people asking for a sign, and by sign they have a specific meaning in their mind, something extraordinary, and then the verse is saying, well, you're just a warner, and there is a guidance for everyone, and the idea is if you're willing, you will be guided, you will see signs. And then the next verse talks about signs that we would consider natural. So after this discussion, I feel like the flow is actually very subtle. There's a subtle connection there. The previous verse seems to talk about people asking for miracles. The next verse is talking about things that we as people would regard as just normal. And there's a subtle connection between these two verses.
And the conclusion with Allah's name, Al-Kabir Al-Muta'al, is also very significant. Like the Al-Kabir, the great, the special one is not the Prophet himself, but Allah, and he is transcendent, because don't look at him in things themselves. Things are pointing to him. He's not there. I thought that was also very, very meaningful.
Well, thank you very much. It was a really beautiful point. If you don't have any other comments or questions, inshallah, we can close the session. And next week, we will continue from Surah or, yeah, it should be Surah, inshallah.
It's not the beginning of the month.
Okay. Thank you again. And Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair.
And may Allah bless the last 10 days of Ramadan, inshallah. Keep us in your prayers.
Ameen, inshallah.